So welcome to this class today, as we are going to be dealing with speaking and to inform and to persuade. So we'll be getting to that in a few moments, but I wanted to just talk about a few things first. I want first of all, I want you to be aware that next Monday, as you know, it's in the syllabus, your informative speech is due. So that will be important to get that speech to me if you could. I would appreciate that. And to have it come in on time. So it's due next Monday. So please get that speech to me so that I can evaluate it. You only have to, you prepare the speech in whatever form you desire, then you record it, give it and record it, and then you send and put it on YouTube, and then you send me the YouTube and I watch it. I evaluate it. I will be using that evaluation form that I sent you earlier. I'll be using that for the next two speeches, the informative and the persuasive speech. So just be aware that that will be coming. If you didn't get it for some reason, please let me know, because I did send it out with all the addresses of everybody in this class. So the that evaluation form is there. Now, I am going to be sending you, this is meant as a very enjoyable assignment. I am going to be sending you a link to a speech. I'll be doing that later today or early tomorrow morning, hopefully today. And what I need you to do is I need you to watch the speech. It's about 7 minutes, maybe 8 minutes, something like that. And I need you to take that evaluation form. You don't have to send it to the evaluation form back to me. I don't mean that. But I want you to take that evaluation form and critique all the parts of the speech. So just watch it and just sit there and check off what you believe the person, what grade each of the areas you'd give them. Would you give them an E for excellent? Would you give them a G for good, an A for average, an F for fair, or a P for poor in each of these areas? And then what we're going to do is we're just going to have a class discussion. I'm going to give you my perspective of this speech. I want you to give your perspective of the speech. And so you're not handing that in. You only have to watch the 7 minutes and just pay attention and use the form as you're watching the speech. And we'll be discussing this. I want this to be helpful. Here are the ways that it's helpful. One, it has all the parts of the theory that we're covering in this class on that evaluation form. You've seen that. Two, you're actually now using it in watching a speech of a former student who gave me permission to use it like this, so that you can see the level that the speech is, and you can learn from a fellow student from the past, and that you can get used to these are the dynamics that are used in evaluating. I want you to be evaluating and talking, and I'll be talking. It'll be more of that sort of just how we see it. And I want you to pick out a few areas, all areas. I want you to pick out some areas that you would say, here's some things the person did really well. Here's some things the person really needs to work on, and you know why. And then we'll have this discussion, and there'll be a time for you to share some of your thoughts and observations. And it's not a written assignment. I'm not asking you to hand it in. I'm not asking you to spend a lot of time. I'm asking you to watch the speech and do evaluation. I realize that there are those of you who are watching by recording. And what I'm going to ask you to do is simply watch the speech. You have the evaluation form. And, you will be able to listen to our evaluations. You won't be able to chime in unless you choose to join the class. But you can take what we say and what I say and compare it to what you wrote in paper. There's no grade for this. It's just a simple assignment. It's getting you involved in the evaluation form and understanding that these are the principles that we've been talking about in class, and they're important principles. Another reason that this is valuable is that at the end of the semester, there is a final exam, and I think I have it booked. Oh, excuse me, I actually have it booked, but it's not officially, it doesn't have to be on this day, on the 19th of April, but that's during the exam week. What I'm going to be doing is allowing you to take the exam when you want to take the exam during exam week. Now, for those of you who are in a different country, you may say, I'd like to take the exam on Wednesday at such and such a time, but that is a different time for me. So please give me your time, but then tell me that time that it represents here in BC, so I get the speech to you in time. And you're going to be able to use this form, that one that I sent you, in the exam. You just pull it out and you just use it. Now, you don't send that to me. Don't send that to me. What I need you to do is to send me the 1,200 word essay that you have to write. This is not a formal essay. This is an exam essay. So you don't have to follow all the protocols of a regular essay at all. You're just going to take that evaluation form and you're going to check off. And then what you do is you write your final exam off what you say you saw in the exam. And you have to defend yourself. Okay, and I'll talk more about that later. That's not the important part. The important part is this. I'm sending you a link to a speech. Please watch the speech. Use the evaluation form. I'll probably send one. Make a hard copy so you got it in front of you. You can talk as we're talking in class. And we will talk about the speech. I want you to learn by using the evaluation form, because this is what I'm going to be using on your next two speeches. This is what you can use for preparing yourself and watching the speech for the final exam, which you can watch the speech that you have to do and write for the final exam. You can watch it more than once. It gives you practice using the form. So we're kind of pulling things together more and more here now. So if you have questions about the final exam, about what I just said, send me an email. Again, that will be down the road. I'll be giving more explanation. But for Wednesday, for those who attend class visually with me, make sure you fill out the form after watching the speech or during watching the speech, and just be prepared to talk with me. No grade in this. For those who are taking it by watching it on YouTube, I'll make sure I send you and tell you, please watch it immediately for this purpose. The idea is to learn how to use this form so that it reinforces what we've been saying in class all along. So that's what I'm working on with you. So be aware that those things are coming, and just watch for it. The speech itself is not very long. It's only about 7 minutes, somewhere in that time frame. It's not perfectly 7 minutes, but it'd be in that time frame for you to watch. Okay, that's what I want to make sure you have clear as we start this class session. This class session may or may not take the next hour. All I want to do today is this one thing. I want to talk about speaking to inform and persuade. The next two speeches you give, of which next week is one, is to inform. And then based on our schedule, because I'm on schedule here, other than making one slight adjustment that I already made, then after next week we don't meet as a class because you're handing in your speech to me. So get it in on Monday. And then I grade because I watch your speeches during the class hours. Okay, then I scan them and I send that back to you, so you will get that. But on the 22nd and on the 24th, we'll be meeting again. So we're meeting this week, then we don't meet next week because of the speeches, then we meet the following week. And I have some talks that I have for the 22nd. And then we're going to watch another speech and do the very same thing again. Okay, again, I'm getting you practice on doing this. And then the following week is the 29th and 31st. And that's your next speech. We don't meet again because you're doing your persuasive speech. So please go to page 7 on the syllabus and see the schedule. Other than changing some dates of topics, I'm on target with everything we're doing. And then we have just April, in which I'll be talking to you. And on the 7th, I'm going to just debrief with you speeches, not specifics, but broadly what I'm observing and a few other little bits and pieces. On the 12th of April, we'll be doing a TED Talk, watching a TED Talk, and then meeting the same way, evaluating a speech, and then we'll meet together. So you have to do that prior. On the 14th, I'm going to be talking through with detail about the final exam and making sure we get signed up. And then the 19th, either you can take the exam that day or you can choose to take it another day. But we'll talk about that. So we are coming towards the close of this course and just needing you to stay on tracking with me. Okay. So let's talk about speaking to inform and to persuade. We have the PowerPoint here in front of you. I just want to check. Can you see my PowerPoint? Somebody,
Yeah.
you can see it?
Yeah.
Good. Thank you, Amanda. Good. Okay, let's talk about, oops, get my computer going here. Let's talk about speaking to inform. Okay, first of all, this is your next speech. It's the informative speech. It is different than the persuasive speech. I mean, it's similar in the way it's shaped and all, but the intent of the two speeches are significantly different. So let's look at them both. First, the informative speech. Now, the purpose of the informative speech are the following. One, it is to help the listener comprehend information previously unknown by them. So let me explain that a little bit. You are not being asked to go find a topic that you know none of us know anything about, because you really don't know for sure how much we do know or don't know. But rather, you are going to take a topic of interest for you, and you are going to try to help us learn something more about that topic than what we already know. You want us to comprehend information beyond even what you already know, likely. Let me give an example of what I'm talking about. Last night, I was watching a history channel. That's not the actual name of the channel. Can't remember the name right offhand. And they had a 1 hour program and then a 2 hour program. I watched the 1 hour program, then I watched the first hour of the second program. And it's on a topic I know a lot about. I was alive when the event took place. And we call it the 9/11. It happened on September 11, and it happened in the year 2001. And we all know either we were alive or we were maybe very young and didn't really know much about what was going on, but we heard over the years what took place. The free country was attacked. The free world was attacked. The United States, very specifically, was attacked. And the United States did not see it coming. And you probably have watched enough to know what 9/11 is about the planes that crashed into the two towers, the financial towers in New York. Actually, a third tower went down, a smaller tower also did collapse later. There were three towers that collapsed, but the two big ones. And the weapon to bring it down in both cases was a airliner that was taken once it was in the air. The guys took control of the plane and then flew the plane into the tower. And over time, eventually, the two towers collapsed. They came down. It was a horrifying event. Now, I knew that. I remember the day. I remember it as if it happened yesterday. I was literally, I had worked hard the night before. So I was sleeping in a bit, and Joanne was up. She was getting ready to go to work. She came upstairs and said a plane crashed into one of the towers in New York. And I went, oh man. So I'm thinking a little tiny plane crashed in. That's not good. And then all of a sudden, Joanne came upstairs and said a second plane crashed into the second tower, except that this was a big airline. At that point, I realized something is happening. I realized this wasn't by mistake. This was by design. I knew it. I was there. I spent part of the day watching. I had to go off to my job situation. In fact, along with teaching at Trinity Western University and Acts seminaries, I was also doing pastoral work at a church, and I was to be at to a meeting that day. And we were actually that day, as a group, there's about 11, 12 of us, supposed to go across the border into the United States for a retreat, just across the border, not very far. Well, that got canceled because we were not allowed to cross the border. Security changed radically at that point. The United States closed down, completely understandable. I remember that. I watched hours and hours of material when it happened and days after. And I was shaken up like most people were shaken up. It was a horrifying experience. More than 3,000 people lost their lives that day. But what I watched last night, same event that I already knew much about, but now these documentaries took me further into understanding what happened to human beings, to their lives, what the events were actually like. And I gained new information, much more information in understanding what happened. It will be 20 years ago come this September. You see, the idea is for you to take information about a topic that you know really well, and the rest of us know maybe something about, but you can take and bring another dynamic to it, whatever that is. Like I told you already, you all know about what, you all have a heart. You all know what a heart is. You know what heart attacks are to the degree that you hear that they happen. You have that level of understanding. I've never had a heart attack, never had that problem. You all know that there are people who have heart surgery. That I have had. But my heart surgery wasn't because my heart was sick. It wasn't because I had a heart attack. It was because of a valve, which is right at the top of my chest here. There are 4 valves connected to your heart. And one of them turned out to be a birth defect. It was not operating correctly all of my life. And they just discovered it. And so they gave me an operation. Well, you know all about the fact that people go to hospitals for operations. You know what a heart is. And I've already talked and already given some experiences related to that. I learned a whole lot more by experiencing it. I could sit and talk about that more than I could before ever having that heart surgery that happened in March 21, either 3 or 4 years ago. I think it was on either the 2017 or 2018. I can't remember now which year it was. And so I learned that a lot, and I could share a lot. Now, some of you have topics that are interesting to you. You have topics that you have great knowledge about. And we probably know something about it, but not necessarily remotely the angle that you're going to share. And that's the idea, is to have a topic that really will take and help you share with us so that's new dimensions that we will comprehend. The informative speech is to make the information relevant to the listeners' lives. Okay, so I learned by watching that documentary last night that this connects to all of us. You may have barely been alive at that point, but there was an attack on freedom. There was an attack on a way of life. It was provoked by people who wanted to cripple the free world. They didn't do that. They only made the free world stronger. You see, often we have to experience resistance to have our muscles get stronger. Well, that was resistance that only made freedom lovers stronger. And you want to make this relevant to the listener who will be taking this in, to understand the free world, or to understand, if you are part of the free world, that this is what you embrace and enjoy. But to make the information relevant to the listener's lives. You know, going back to my heart surgery, you know, it's wise for you to make sure that when you go in for visiting your doctor for an annual checkup, to have them just check to make sure your heart's fine. Usually they do. They have that stethoscope that they use, and that's how it was discovered that I had something wrong. Meeting with my doctor, he kept feeling with his stethoscope around, and he stopped and said, you know, I think I'm hearing a heart murmur. A heart murmur means that one of the valves, you have 4 valves, is not operating correctly. And that, in fact, was the case. My aorta valve was not operating correctly and had to be taken out. So it's relevant to you. I mean, you have a heart. You should be informed, so you're aware, because things can happen. And the more aware you are, the better it is for you. To be well informed is very, very critical. The informative speech is meant to expand the knowledge of you, of the listener. See, so when you're giving the speech, don't try to give us what we know. You can use that as a ladder to share what we may not know. To expand our understanding is what is critical. For instance, just take this course. This course in part has been meant to inform you. I told you there are 2 major issues in this course. One is to teach you the science. That is the information you need to know. The more you know, the better you can develop the art of public speaking. You see, there are 5 functions of an introduction, and you need to develop those 5 functions. There are 4 functions of conclusion. You need to develop those 4 functions and to learn to do them in a very short period of time, especially on a 7-minute speech, which is what is due next week. So you want to expand the knowledge of the listener so that they have more understanding. And that's what I've been doing for you. Many of you may not have known that there are 5 functions introduction, 4 functions for a conclusion. You may not have known that there's the different types of speeches. There's different ways by which you can choose to make your presentation, whether it is going to be manuscript or whether it's going to be memorized or whether it's going to be extemporaneous. You may not have really thought about how important it is to spend time studying the future audience that you're going to be speaking to, doing audience analysis. You may not have known how critical it is to understand the issue of listening, that we don't listen as well as we think we do. On and on and on, the topics we've been dealing with are all critical. It's expanding your knowledge so that you, a student, understands when I give speeches, I need to take all this into consideration. If you don't, you will be at very best a mediocre speaker. Not because of me. Would you be a great speaker? You'll be a great speaker because you have listened, developed the science of public speaking, and then you apply that in your speech. And your audience, they know the difference. You've heard good speeches and average speeches. You know that. They exist. Do you really want to just give a speech because you have to give a speech, but you don't want to do a really good job in it so people think that you're not that good a speaker? I doubt that. I think you want to make a difference in the lives of people. And so you understand that it is important for you to study the principles of public speaking and then develop your artistic skills in public speaking to make a difference in the lives of people. This course has been here to expand the knowledge of you, the student in this class. You can be now more informed and develop a speech to a better level. The informative speech is meant to help the listener minimally remember key points that are there, key points of the subject that are really, really important. And so you want to help them minimally remember the key points of the speech. You can have an audience walk around and say, those 3 points he or she made about whatever the topic is, I will never forget that. You've just become an effective speaker because you've made a difference in the life of somebody who says, I'm not going to forget. I'm not going to sit back and do nothing. I am going to do something about that because of that speech. Now you've become an effective speaker. And that's what you're looking to become. Last, the informative speech is to inform. It's not so much to persuade. There is persuasion built into it to a degree. Of course there is. But the fact of the matter is that your major purpose of your speech is to really inform and to make a difference in the life of your audience. It's to inform. You know, when people know, knowledge is powerful. And when people know, they can remember, and then they can put value to what that knowledge is, and then they can put application to the knowledge, the cognitive, the affective, the behavioral. And by informing the audience well, it makes a difference. My prayer for you in public speaking is that because of this course, you will apply the principles. I won't be there, but please hear me. It makes a difference in the mind of an audience. It makes a difference if you have to give a speech in another class. I had a class, a fellow professor at Trinity Western taught argument and debate. And he was talking to me one day and he said, I can always tell the students who are in my class who've taken your class because you really deal with the science of public speaking. And when they're doing debate and they're making their presentation of their argument of a position, those who really prepared, who've taken your course, you can always tell. There's a marked difference. Believe me, there is. I mean, if you take a course on how to write a good essay, and then you go and you follow the principles, the professor who reads your essay will see a difference. And so when people listen to you as a speaker, they will know there's a difference. There's a huge difference. So be sure to understand that the informative speech, which this course is built not around the informative speech, but built around informing you, is very critical for your well-being. Now, your major purpose in the next speech is to inform us. Doesn't mean you can't do a little persuasion, but that's not the major focus of the speech. So please remember to inform us much more in the informative speech than trying to persuade. Though persuading is going to happen to some degree, and we understand that. So the informative speech, that really is there just for you to realize, to help the listener comprehend information that they didn't know before, to make information relevant to their lives, to expand their knowledge, to help them at least remember the main points. Remember, it's more about informing than it is about persuading. Now, there's a couple of things I want you to remember here. One thing I want you to remember is that the speech should be balanced. The speaker might share two sides of an issue without interjecting their position. So maybe you're talking about two of the greatest colors that impact humanity. The colors are blue and green. I'm not saying they are, I'm just making this up. But let's just say that was true. But you're not here to try to persuade us to love blue color more than green color, or to love the green color more than the blue color. You're here to show us how important the two colors are. You're informing us so that we can make our own decision which color we think is of greater value. In politics, you're not trying to tell us what party to vote for. You're telling us to understand both parties and where they come from so that we can make an educated decision about what we believe true, and we will vote our conscience accordingly. So the speaker tries to share at least the two sides of an issue, but really doesn't try to interject specifically their position. That may come out to a degree, but that's the intent of this particular type of speech. Secondly, the speech should be organized and contoured to the audience's existing knowledge structures. Okay, it should be organized and contoured to the audience's existing knowledge structures. What does that mean? It means you need to do audience analysis to understand your audience to the best of your ability. In the last class, one of the students, a gal, said to me, could I go over to better understand the speech should be organized and contoured to the audience's existing knowledge and structures? I said to her, and she actually said, well, how can we know that this is happening? I said to her, that's where audience analysis becomes helpful, because then you really can know as much as possible. You're not going to know everything. You cannot perfectly contour it because you don't know each person in your audience. You may know some, you may know generally speaking, but you won't know them specifically. But the more you know about your audience, the better it is. You see, if I'm going to be speaking about going through transitions of life, okay, I had my doctor of education. My major was in adult education, so I did developmental psychology of adults. We go through stages of life, okay, and and I know that when I'm speaking from a person who's been married 50 years. So I'm older than most of you, I'm pretty sure. Well, in knowing mostly my audience, even if I don't know them specifically, I know that most, not all, Trinity Western University students who are working on a BA degree are probably, not all, because I got quite a few that are not, are the big majority are late teens and all the way through their 20s. And then a few are, but still many in the 30s, and then, some in the 40s and so forth. See, I can know that much about my audience, and that helps me contour my thoughts and my illustrations and my content and how I shape it towards that audience. And I know that they're students, and I know that Trinity Western University students take their education seriously, and they're very concerned about their own development and being. Those things really help me shape the course. Now, I still got content, but I want to take the content and introduce to my audience, the students, this content, the science, and saying to my audience, now you need to learn the science so that you shape the art of you presenting. So you want to organize and contour the audience existing knowledge structures. So I was talking to my students about that. So I do know my students, although I don't know them by name, and I don't know them in specifics about every detailed thing. Of course I can't know that. But I can know much about my audience. And by knowing much about my audience, I can shape my speech to the best ability that I have. For instance, my daughter, my oldest daughter, Tanya, and her husband, and my 3 grandchildren gave me a Christmas gift. I think I've mentioned this gift. And every week I get a question sent to me, and then I'm to take time to answer the question. And they are sometimes, what were your favorite toys? What was one of the favorite moments of whatever? And so I write, what were your parents like? What were your grandparents like? And I write. And at the end of the year, my children, all my children, my daughter and her husband the oldest one, then my youngest daughter and her husband, and then each of my 3 grandchildren are going to get a bound book with my writings. Okay. And they will know something more about me. My grandchildren will find this really interesting, knowing more about the grandfather, or they already know things about me. But this last week, actually starting yesterday, I decided that the next question I was going to begin to address the next question. And actually, I probably may take this question and actually spend 2 or 3 sessions with it because it's significant. And I was asked to speak about advice I would give to parents raising children, because I'm a parent. My children are now adults, both married. One has 3 children. I'm a grandparent, and so I'm writing. Really, not just to, I'm writing to my daughters and my sons-in-law, but I'm also writing to people who might read this, to young adults. I'm also writing for the future of my grandchildren when they become parents. And so I sat down and I brainstormed what advice would I give for raising children. But I thought about my audience. My audience are my children and my grandchildren, and then also other adults who are going to be parents raising children. And so I ended up with 15 thoughts, and there may be more I'll add. I'm not necessarily saying this is exhaustive. And I have written on 3 of them so far, and I'm going to be writing more. And I'm thinking of making maybe 5 of these topics for one section, then do another section another time, and then another section another time. But here's the 3 that I've written on so far. I wrote on, and these are not in order of importance. That's not what this is trying to do. But I wrote on the importance of follow these 3 guidelines in your relationship with your children based on where they are in life. First, when they're really young, you have to control. You got to make sure they don't put their hand on the burner. So you got to control that situation. As they get older and move into adolescence and teenagehood, you go from being the one who controls to the one who's the coach. You're giving them more freedom. You're giving them those guidelines all through life, and you're there to coach them when they need help. You're giving them the realization that they're emerging as an adult one day. The third level is being a consultant. See, there's a day when your children need your knowledge and your protection, control. There's a day when they still need your knowledge and your protection, but you got to give them freedoms to make decisions, but you guide them with principles. That's being a coach. And then there comes a day when your children are adults themselves. They don't need to ask you, but they will. They will if you've been doing the job well. They'll come to you. And that's when you become a consultant. So that was my first topic. But guess what? I know this because I know all parents go through all sorts of stuff. The second topic I talked about was keep the lights on. Keep the lights on. Always keep an open door. Always let your children know. The light's on for them. You may mess up, but that doesn't mean you lose our love. The third topic I talked on was study them so that you can guide them. A child needs to be raised up understanding their bent. And when they're old, they will not go away from their bent. And so that's the principles I talked about. Other ones I'm going to talk about are praise them, pray for them, take them to church, hug them, read to them, listen to them, accept them, insist on they having chores, be proud of them, always realize they are watching you. Those are topics I'm going to talk on. But you know what? I know my audience is existing knowledge. Young adults have experienced some of this from their parents and kind of know this, but they don't know it in the same way as when you are and going through being a parent. It's good to hear somebody who's been there and done that to be able to say, here's some important things to remember. So, speaking to inform, the speech should be organized and contoured to the audience's existing knowledge structures. Strategies that help to inform. You don't need to use all these strategies, but these are strategies that can be very, very beneficial if you choose to use them with informing. Okay, you might use the strategy of narration, telling the story. It's a sequence of events or a story. Tell the story. That's what was happening last night when I was watching these. I watched 2 of the 3 hours. It was a narration. In fact, there was this very poignant moment in these documentaries where a reporter was talking about. He was walking around with a cameraman, and he came upon a couple, and they had been trying to get away from all the 9/11 aftermath of the collapse, the smoke, the dust in the air. It was absolutely horrendous. And their faces were white. They were Caucasian, were wiped clean because they had a handkerchief they kept wiping their face. But the rest of their outer lines and their hands and their arms were totally caked in dust. They actually looked like statues. If they had just stood still, you would have thought that was a statue. And so he asked them about their journey. He asked them about their experiences. He asked them about how things were going for them in the midst of this crisis as it was happening. It was a narration. It was a powerful story to listen to. Some of you will know the power of story. Don't just tell a story, but use the story to teach us something, to report. It's sharing a firsthand account. And that certainly was happening last night again. People were giving firsthand reports on what was happening. It was shaped away from being a narration per se, but it was very similar to it. It's a report. It's giving a firsthand account. And you might be able to inform us about the dynamics. Like, we all know the moon. We've all seen the moon in the sky, but maybe you went to the moon. I know you didn't, but maybe you went to the moon and you came home. Well, you can share the firsthand experience of being in a rocket ship flying to the moon, coming home. Powerful story. Well, of course, not many people can share that story, but maybe you can share a firsthand report of what it's like buying a car and all that's involved in buying a car and what it's like taking care of the car. What's it like driving away with the car? It's yours. It's a firsthand report. You can instruct to explain how something is done. You can instruct how something is done. I had a student who gave a speech on how to make arrowheads out of rocks. And he had his machinery there. He didn't do all the work in front of us because it takes time. But he showed us the different stages of the rocks and how they get shaped. And he showed us. And then he had this little arrow head, or had several actually, that you attach to an arrow, a bow and arrow, and you can use it for hunting. And he actually gave me one of his arrows. One of his arrows that he has, the head of the arrow. And I have it buried somewhere. And he showed us, explained how it's done. To define, to develop a precise meaning. I had a student give a speech on the black hole. He gave a very, very clear, precise meaning. He defined the meaning of what the black hole really is. We hear the black hole exists, but now most of us had some understanding. You can also analyze to show the major divisions and parts of a topic, to analyze it, to take it apart and show us the parts. Now, for instance, at the beginning of the semester, I had you watch a short little video of a plane crash, the plane that didn't take off because the pilots had not paying attention and made a mistake and people's lives were lost. So there are divisions of the process that brought that plane to a point of not being able to take off. You can analyze. You analyze any number of things that go on. Next day, we're going to analyze. You're going to watch a video, suppose 7-minute speech. You're going to be ready to have a conversation. You'll analyze. I'll say, hey, this person did this introduction. Let's first take a look at her gaining and maintaining our attention. Let's analyze that. What did some of you observe? I'll be asking you, so be ready. You don't have to write it all up by any means, but you have to be ready to analyze. Well, you might want to do an analysis in the speech. To describe is to explain how something appears. To describe how something appears. You might want to give a description of what lightning is, or what a tornado is, or what a first day in school for a child is like. Whatever. The world. There's billions of topics, but only a few that you will find really interesting to describe. Well, go for that. You don't just describe, you help us understand, okay? Describing to understand. To compare, it's to examine the differences between two or more things, persons, or places and determine which is superior. I get uncomfortable with the word person in there, but it's there for a reason. But the reality is that we have to make decisions, and we do it by comparing. Do you like a certain type of car, or do you like another type of car? Do you like a 4-door sedan, or do you like a 4x4? Do you like a car, or do you like a truck, or do you like a van? And you could talk about all the advantages and the differences between the two. You could talk about the differences in regard to what the ride is like, what are the prices like, what are the dealers like who sell these. There are so many things that we compare. Things to even what type of pop you prefer, to what type of snow shovel you would prefer if you're, thankfully we don't have that today. It goes on and on. You can compare places. How would you compare Canada to another country? How would you compare Vancouver to another city? How would you compare Trinity Western to another university? There are so many things that you could compare. And what you're doing is you're showing which is superior, which is the better of the two. And so that's what you're doing. Now the contrast is a little bit different. You're not trying to examine the differences, but you're trying to examine the uniquenesses of two or more things, persons or places, and appreciate them for what they are. Uniquenesses, for instance, this is where I feel more comfortable with the word person. I'm not comfortable with the word comparing. For instance, if you get married, don't compare your husband if you're a woman, or your wife if you're a man, to another person that same gender. That's dangerous to do, because it's not impossible for one day you come to the conclusion that the other person is better than your wife or better than your husband. That's so dangerous to do. But you can contrast. You're showing the uniquenesses of the two or more things or persons or places. And the idea is that you're doing that to appreciate them for what they are. And when I've done parenting seminars, I've told parents, don't compare your children, contrast them. See, the contrasting has the idea of showing uniqueness of something and appreciating the uniqueness. You might want to, instead of comparing two cars, you want to show the contrast, because quite frankly, both cars are very good. So you show the contrasting, and you show your appreciation for them, and you don't tell them which one you advise the people to take, but rather you say, with the information, you can make your own decision. If you're a parent, don't compare your children. That's so dangerous. Look at your children and find what is unique about them and express appreciation for their uniqueness. that is so much healthier, so much better. Uh, I have two daughters. My oldest daughter is a teacher. She is a fifth grade teacher. She is a dark haired, blue eyed, right handed, very structured person. My younger daughter is also a fifth grade teacher, and she got her degrees in some of the same universities that my older daughter did, Trinity. But she is, her hair is darker now, but it's partly darker because her hairdresser made it darker. She's also got green eyes, not blue eyes, and she's not right-handed, she's left-handed. So she's very unique and different. And I celebrate my two daughters. So I literally have one daughter that's my favorite blue-eyed right-handed daughter. I have the other daughter that's my favorite green-eyed left-handed daughter. They're unique. And we can do contrasts in all sorts of things regarding people, regarding countries, regarding foods that we prefer, whatever it is. And we can show either, depending what you're doing, comparing or contrasting. You can demonstrate. You can choose to uh, want to exhibit the operation of something that brings about a product. I had a student give a speech on how to make a cookie you did not have to cook. And she had the ingredients there. She showed us the stages. She also had the stages that were done beforehand so we could just see them. And then she had a whole container of these cookies, and we could each take one cookie for ourselves. And they were very tasty. So she exhibited the operation of how to make a cookie that brought about the product of the cookie by doing it without cooking the cookies themselves, which was a very intriguing speech. So that's the informative speech. That's the one you're doing next week. So you have to sit back, you have to think. I'm paying attention to all this. I'm using that evaluation form, and I'm a little more stricter because you've gotten all of the information. Now you get to do the speeches. Okay, so you're a little more informed. The persuasive speech. There are really four objectives of a persuasive speech. And it's not that you have to do all four of them in one speech. You don't. At least do one of them, and probably you'll end up doing more than just one. So let's look at the four objectives of the persuasive speech. And this speech is due in 1, 2, 3 weeks from now. So this is public speaking month. The first speech is due next week, and I need it right away. Then 2 weeks later, the next speech is due. Okay. So here are the four objectives to persuade for a persuasive speech. Number one, to create a new attitude with the listener. Maybe there's no attitude that exists at all. Maybe let's just take voting. Maybe there are people that don't vote. They don't even think about it. And to be honest with you, the 20-something crowd are the ones that are harder to get to vote. Yet this is their incredible freedom choice in a free enterprise sort of country like Canada or the United States, is to create a new attitude with the listener, to say to them, you know, for you to just go, voting's not important, to saying, you know what, actually voting is important. That's a change of an attitude from not important to saying it's incredibly important. So that's really an important one. Another objective is that to consider is to change an existing attitude of an audience into a different direction. So yes, they have an attitude. Okay, their attitude might be a new attitude is to create a new attitude is where no attitude exists. To change an attitude is where an attitude exists, but you like to change its direction. So they have an attitude. They say, voting is not necessary. And you want to change your attitude. Voting is very important and is very necessary. That's a changing the existing attitude. See, foundationally, can you set a new attitude? Then can you help the attitude be moving in the right direction? The third one is to change an attitude, an existing attitude intensity of an audience. So from moving from no, I have no attitude to yeah, uh, I don't know if I'll vote, maybe, to you know what, I am voting. This is really important. And so you want to change the direction. A fourth persuasive speech is to obtain a behavioral response beyond the speech within the members. So they go from, oh, I have never thought about voting. That's creating a new attitude where you say it's important, to maybe you have an audience where they say, ah, I'll vote maybe, I may not, to they saying, you know what, I think I should vote. To the third one, you go from I think I should vote to, you know what, I am voting. It's intense. And then to number four, obtain a behavioral response beyond the speech within the members of the audience. So you've got going from not voting to voting. And that's what you're trying to create. Now, any number of topics, not just on voting. Barriers that a speaker must overcome with the audience in giving a persuasive speech. And there are some barriers that you need to be aware of. It's an important, you need to be aware attitudes exist. One is selective perception. Some people just do not want to listen to everything. They say, you know what? I know that they believe what I believe. I'm going to listen to their speech because they're going to say things I'm going to like hearing. The second is a selective recall. See, people don't like remembering what makes them uncomfortable. And so they will only want to be with people who are going to say things that are saying things that I like to hear. Thirdly, selective exposure. People make decisions. He believes what I believe. I will expose myself to what he has to share. I believe this about this, and that person speaking on it, I will go and listen to the person. That person speaking on something that makes me really uncomfortable, I'm not going to attend. That's selective exposure. A degree of commitment. It's another barrier that will you need as a speaker to overcome when giving a persuasive speech. You know, people may listen to you. You may say, I really, 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 you want them to do something. Okay. Let's say you want them to change from drinking Coca-Cola to Pepsi-Cola. Let's say you're trying to persuade them to start drinking Pepsi-Cola. But people, if they say, you know what, I love Coke and Coca-Cola, and I'm drinking Coca-Cola, and they're not changing. Well, it's hard to get a change there. But let's say people are saying, you know, I love soft drinks. I love Coke. I don't mind Coke or Pepsi, whatever. Well, their degree of commitment there is softer. So they're more likely going to be considering changing if you can persuade them. And so the degree of commitment becomes really, really important in regard to choosing a topic that people will make a change in. Public commitment. When a person has gone public and they have said, I love Coca-Cola, I'm always going to drink Coca-Cola. And then somebody comes and gives a persuasive speech that's really good about why Pepsi-Cola is a better drink to drink than Coca-Cola. It's hard for that person to say, oh, I've changed my mind. Or if here's how you vote on something. Once you've declared yourself publicly, it's really hard to change. People who made a decision about something and are not going to expose themselves to speeches that could change their mind. The differences between attitudes of the sender and the receiver, that could be a barrier. You see, the speaker could be absolutely powerfully convinced of a change that's necessary, but the sender may not feel so strongly, or may not like how strong that the speaker is speaking on it, and may disregard or want to disregard what the speaker has to say. That can impact. A group pressure. Now, group pressure is a reality. Group pressure happens. And when group pressure comes on, people don't want to change because they don't want to lose face with their friends. They may inside think you're right, but they're not going to say anything, or may even not do anything, because they know that this could be a problem for them if they were to change their mind. They don't want to lose face. And group pressure is powerful. It can be in family group pressure, it can be friendship pressure, it can be peer pressure, it can be gender pressure, it can be pressure coming from your ethical, your background as far as authenticity, any number of places. And group pressure is a very real thing, and people will resist. And so we need to realize that these are barriers that get in the way. I mean, when you're in front of an audience and you're giving a persuasive speech, be aware that there will be people who will be probably all one of those seven, if not more. And that's a really painful experience. How do you make them change? It means developing your skills as a persuader. This is the last slide, and I'm done. People are more likely to change their behavior if the suggested change does one of these. And there are, I think, 5 of them. 1, people are more likely to change their behavior if the suggested change is consistent with their present beliefs, attitudes, and values. Now, the reality is that you're going to be, in a persuasive speech, you're going to have some different beliefs, attitudes, and values of the people you're trying to persuade. The key is understanding that you must have common ground. That's where audience analysis is necessary. That's where you begin to, in the introduction, relating the topic to your audience, meaning that you understand some of their values. I told you about that hostile audience I faced, and I had to find how was I going to speak to them and persuade them if our beliefs, attitudes, and values had differences, and they did. But we also had common ground. We all cared about early childhood education, and they were early childhood educators. And their attitudes were, we have to care for them. And their values were strong towards doing just that. I felt the same way. I felt exactly the same way. I've taught courses in early childhood education. I've been the director of education in institutions where there are lots of young children involved. And so I clearly cared about this. And when they saw that, they lowered their defenses and were willing to listen. In fact, they went out and bought my tape so they could have other people listen to it. The people were more likely to change their behavior if the suggested change will require small rather than large changes in their lives. Seriously, if you want to change an audience, understand that if you can make them change in a small way, you begin the process of change. We think it has to be everything. It's not going to be. It's going to take time. And so it's necessary for you to see the importance of giving it the small changes rather than large changes for it to happen. And it can happen. If you see some people who smoke 3 packs of cigarettes a day and you want them to quit smoking, if you ask them just, okay, if instead of smoking 3 packs a day, smoke 2 packs a day, you're still smoking, just slow down the amount of cigarettes in your mouth. Then after you got them down to 2, get them down to 1 pack a day. And then break it down into only so many cigarettes of 1 pack a day. Keep breaking it down. Okay, it's a matter of small steps. You know, I walk over 6,000 kilometers a year, and by May 15, I have to hit 6,000 kilometers because May 16 starts the new year. And I've already gone past 4,900. I've got 1,100 steps ago. This is my 6th year of doing it, and in October, November, I will have walked the equivalent of the circumference of the Earth since I've been recording my steps. This is my 6th year. And that is 40,075 kilometers. And some people say, how do you do it? Do you know how you do it? 1 step at a time. And do you know how you help people make decisions that bring about change? 1 small step at a time, rather than large steps. You go up to a person who smokes 3 packs of cigarettes a day and say, I want to persuade you right now to stop smoking. You're not persuading them. But if you say, hey, you know, you smoke 3 packs a day, I'd like you to smoke 2 packs and then a 3rd pack minus 3 cigarettes, so you don't smoke quite all of them. And you keep cutting it back. Those are smaller steps than just 1 big giant stop. People are more likely to change their behavior if the suggested change will benefit them more than it will cost them. Listen, people are self-centered. People want to know what's the benefit. So what's the benefit of stopping smoking? You could do your research on that. You will find so much material. What it does for the lungs, what it does for the coloring of your teeth, what it does for the impact on your ability to walk and to run, because you're impacting your lungs in a negative way. If you can show them that there's greater to win than to pay, that go a long way. People are more likely to change their behavior if the suggested change will meet their needs. You need to show them this meets your needs. You will do a greater job preventing lung cancer and living longer, watching your children, watching your grandchildren grow than if you smoke. It will meet your needs and keep you healthy. This is the last thought I think I have here. People are more likely to change their behavior if the suggested change is approached gradually in the speech. If you come at your people, your audience, hammering them right off the bat, all of you right now, you're all smoking. And I can tell you, every single cigarette you're smoking right now is taking 1 day off your life. Everybody you need to know right now, stop. We need to stop. Right now, you need to stop. It's not going to happen. But when you begin to show rationale to begin to do it gradually, it's more likely going to happen. Because it snowballs. You see, as you start cutting back or you start adding, if it's a good thing to add, there's a snowball effect. Here's a snowball effect for all young adults to hear. Learn to begin to invest into your retirement now. I know you're investing by education, but start investing. Even if you say, I'm setting aside just $10 a month or $50 a month into an RSP, you create a habit. You grow the habit as you become freer and start earning more money. And when you get older, money over time begins to build. And there's a point where you see 10% of $100 is $10. That's not too big. But 10% of $1 million is $100,000. So if you have $1 million one day, and people do, in their RSPs, and everything rises by 6, 7, 8, 9, 10% a year in investments, and last year investments went up in the broad sense. I have 3 categories. In my higher risk ones, they went up more than 17%. And my low risk ones went up 6 or 7%. No, I didn't make $100,000 last year, just to let you know. But you see, if you do it gradually, it makes a difference. So listen, public speaking, you're dealing with speeches. You're going to be giving these speeches in the next few weeks here. Next week, your informative speech is due. Go back, look at those notes. Think about something, develop it. All I want from you is your link to your speech so I can sit and watch it. Remember, set up your room in such a way that you have a fake audience so your eyes look at them. Get yourself away from the screen, back up, stand up maybe. I don't stand up because I got this screen so locked, this camera locked in on top of this screen, so I sit. But I hate this. I prefer walking around as I'm teaching. That's my style. Okay, that's coming. You need to know your speech is coming. Please, by Wednesday, you'll be getting this email with me. It'll have a link to it. Please watch the short speech and be ready to do an evaluation of the speech, okay? Just be ready to do an evaluation of the speech. You don't have to hand in anything. We'll be talking and I'll ask different ones of you to say, what did you say for this? Just take that evaluation and do a quick circle. It's all you have to do. It does not take a long time. And then I'll teach you off that. I'm done. Have a good day. See you next week. Oh, no, on Wednesday, I mean. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye. Goodbye. Thank you.
Bye. Have a good day.
You too.